In 1968, 8 mice were placed inside a meticulously designed utopia. They had unlimited food, unlimited water, an optimal climate, and zero risk from predators or disease. 5 years later, every single one of them was dead. Not one of these deaths could be traced to physical injury or a diagnosable disease. The architect of this world was an American ethologist named John Calhoun. By the time he locked those first 8 founders inside, he had spent over 2 decades building successive versions of this rodent paradise. He was obsessed with a specific question: what happens to the internal structure of a society when the external environment provides everything? When Calhoun published the results of this 25th experiment, it triggered an immediate cultural reaction. The findings appeared to offer scientific validation for the idea that struggle is the only thing keeping a civilization from destroying itself. Politicians and urban planners used the collapse of the mouse colony as a metaphor for the perceived decay of modern housing projects. They viewed the violence in the enclosure as a direct mirror of the social instability in the inner city. For many observers in the late 20th century, the erratic behavior Calhoun documented felt like a logical byproduct of the dense crowding found in modern human cities. Calhoun's own conclusion, however, lay elsewhere. He saw a different pressure at work, a variable hidden beneath the surface of the physical abundance. The enclosure, which Calhoun named Universe 25, was a 9-foot square room lined with mesh tunnels and apartments stacked floor to ceiling. The physical space was designed to comfortably accommodate 3,800 mice. After an initial period of exploration, the population exploded. Numbers doubled every 55 days. By day 315, over 600 animals were living inside the enclosure. This chart illustrates the disconnect that began to fracture the colony. While physical space remained plentiful, the social space had reached a ceiling. There were more capable individuals than there were territorial or social roles for them to occupy. Young males began to drift into the center of the room, forming listless pools of bodies. Without a territory to defend or a mate to court, they became entirely passive. When attacked, they would simply lie there and absorb the damage. Others moved to the opposite extreme. They became frantic, abandoning social rituals and violently forcing their way into occupied nests. Calhoun observed that when a society produces a surplus of individuals who have no clear role to fill, the result is a breakdown into listless withdrawal and chaotic aggression. Calhoun called this decay the behavioral sink. Even though food was equally distributed, the mice began crowding compulsively around a few specific feeders. Eventually, they lost the drive to eat unless other mice were present. The family unit dissolved next. Dominant males grew exhausted from the constant effort required to hold territory and stopped defending their nests. Nursing mothers were left to protect their young against intruders alone. Under this strain, maternal instincts failed. Mothers began to abandon their pups in scattered corners of the enclosure, or in the most stressed sections of the colony, consume their own offspring. The survivors of this generation grew up with no concept of social interaction. Calhoun labeled them the beautiful ones. They spent their lives in isolation, eating, sleeping, and grooming their fur. They never fought, they never tried to mate, and they participated in no social activity. They were physically flawless, yet functionally dead. By the population peak on day 560, the mice were still physically alive, but the behavioral structures that held them together as a species had dissolved. Calhoun wrote that the mice suffered 2 separate deaths. The first was the death of the spirit, a loss of purpose that occurred years before the last physical body died. The lethal element inside Universe 25 was the evaporation of social function. Without a hierarchy to navigate or a role to fill, the mice ceased to act as a community. While the food and water supply remained constant, the incentive to participate in the species had vanished. The mice were physically sustained, but socially adrift. Abundance had effectively removed the friction necessary to sustain a sense of purpose. Without the struggle of scarcity, the internal structure of the colony simply dissolved. Despite the grim results, Calhoun did not see this as an inevitable prophecy for humanity. He spent the remainder of his career trying to find the missing variable that could prevent this type of collapse. He believed humans possessed a tool the mice did not: ideational generativity. This capacity to expand into conceptual space when physical space runs out allows us to survive. By inventing new roles and systems, we create reasons to participate beyond mere biological survival. Universe 25 suggests that a society's survival depends on the persistent creation of new purpose, a capacity for renewal that was unavailable to the mice, but remains open